believe we're missing a gavel. Yes, it is. The House will come to order. Today's Pledge of Allegiance will be led by our very own Olivia Hart from the University of Colorado, Denver.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Schiebel, please call the roll.
Representatives Amabile, Armagost, Bacon, Byrd, Bockenfeld, Basenecker, Bottoms, Bradfield, there she is, Bradley, Brown, Representative Brown, Catlin, Rep. Catlin. Catlin's excused. Doherty. DeGraff. Degree Kennedy. Dixon. Duran. English. Epps. Evans. Frizzell. Froelich. Garcia, Gonzalez Gutierrez, Rep. Gonzalez Gutierrez. Oh. Hamrick, Hartsook, Herod, Representative Herod is excused. Holtorf, Representative Judah, Joseph. Yeah. Oh, yeah, she's here. Kip. Leader. Lindsay. Linstead. Luck. Lukens. Lynch. Mabry. Marshall. Martinez. Morrow. Representative Morrow. Excused. McCormick. McLaughlin. Michelson Janae. Ortiz. Rep. Ortiz is excused. Parenti. Puglisi. Ricks. Representative Ricks. Rep. Ricks is excused. Charbini. Sirota. Snyder. Soper. Story. Rep. Story. Excused. Taggart. Titone. Rep. Titone. No. Representative Titone's excused. Valdez. Velasco. Rep. Velasco. Rep. Velasco is excused. Vigil. Weinberg. Weissman. Wilford. Wilson. Winter. Woodrow. Young. And Madam Speaker.
Here. With 59 present and 6 excused, we do have a quorum. Representative Vigil.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and good morning, members. I have my script here so that I don't forget my lines. Madam Speaker, I move that the Journal of Wednesday, March 1st, 2023 be approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk.
Members, you have heard the motion that the journal be approved as corrected by the chief clerk. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The motion is adopted. Announcements and introductions. Representative Lindstedt
Thank you,
and
Madam
Representative
Speaker.
Frizzell.
Today, we are joined by representatives from Habitat for Humanity who are advocating on behalf of affordable home ownership. There are 25 Habitat for Humanity affiliates in the building today, and they have a coffee bar downstairs, so please take a minute to say hello.
Representative Frizzell.
We have Habitat representatives who are working in counties across Colorado, including Mesa, Eagle, Garfield, Pitkin, Larimer, Boulder, Jefferson Park, Summit, Grand, El Paso, Arapahoe, and Denver counties. Habitat for Humanity affiliates annually serve 250 households through new construction, major rehab, and repair projects. Please join us in welcoming them here today. They are up in the gallery.
Excellent. Representative Catlin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's an honor to serve with you.
And an honor to serve with you.
Thank you. Members, I wanted to remind you there is an event tonight over at the Warwick Hotel from the Colorado Optometric Association. It's, a cocktail party, an opportunity for you to get together to help greet the people that help us see better. And if you miss that, don't forget they'll have breakfast burritos tomorrow morning in the basement. So you could probably get supper and breakfast out of these people. So give them an opportunity to go say hello. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Snyder and company.
Not too bad.
Members, can I please ask you to take your conversations to the side? Attention to the well. Thank you. Representative Snyder.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good morning, members, and we're very honored today to have some wonderful guests with us. We have the members, board members and staff of the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments sitting over here on our right, and give them a warm welcome.
Representative Wilson.
Representative Snyder and myself have both been members of that Council of Governments, and they do a lot of work in transportation, military, water, everything you can think of, they help local governments get to. So we are happy to have them here and working with us. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate you being here today. Representative McLaughlin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's a pleasure to serve with you.
And a pleasure to serve with you.
Today, we have lots and lots of people here representing SHAPE, Colorado. If you could all stand up, please. Thank you to all of you. They represent passionate health and physical education. Educators, remember the best class you ever had at school? It was probably your PE class because you got to move and do some stuff. So they're all here today. They're building a lasting legacy for the health and wellness of Colorado students. They are here representing the University of Northern Colorado, Metropolitan State University, and CSU Pueblo, as well as over 18 House districts and 16 Senate districts. So one of them is probably in your district, so make sure you go over and say hello to them and welcome them to the Capitol. Thanks.
Thank you. Representative Amabile.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We have Business Affairs and Labor today at 1:30, and we will be hearing House Bill 1118 for action only, and we are going to get started exactly at 1:30, so please be there. We will not be hearing House Bill 1196. Thank you.
Representative Lindsay.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everybody. You may have noticed a toothbrush on your desk. That's because tomorrow is the Colorado Dental Association's lobbying day. They will also have a breakfast tomorrow morning, so I just wanted to let you know, from 8 to 9 downstairs, the basement committee rooms, room 107. So go grab some teeth-healthy breakfast tomorrow. Thank you.
Representative Kipp.
Thank you, members of Energy Environment. I think I talked to everybody, but you have the day off of committee today. We have no bills to hear today, so you may do other things with your afternoon.
Representative Woodrow.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members of the House State Civic, Military, and Veterans Affairs Committee, we will be meeting upon adjournment 10 minutes following upon adjournment in LSBA to hear House Bills 1180 and 1193. See you then.
Thank you. Representative Winter and Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate it. It's my honor to stand up here, and I'd like to recognize my friends from American for Prosperity, Colorado. They are here today for their lobby day. If you please stand up. Y'all, they're in the fight. They are in fight to keep more money in Colorado citizens' pockets. They protect and defend the taxpayer Bill of Rights. They're working to stop the gas tax from going into effect, and they're trying to protect Coloradans from soaring energy bills and inflation and everything that we're facing as Colorado citizens. So we'd like to thank them for being here today and for what they do.
Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If you get the opportunity, please speak with them, share your ideas, let them share their ideas with you, and we can move forward with better ways of doing things. Thank you.
Representative Holtorf.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to Americans for Prosperity. We want all Americans to prosper of every socioeconomic category, and you fight that good fight. What I especially appreciate is the fact that you're standing up for Tabor as people in this state try to whittle and chisel and erode Tabor and use it as a political football. You do not do that. You stand for the citizens. You stand knowing and proclaiming that the tax dollars that come to the state are the citizens' dollars, not the state's dollars. And they should be, no, you can't clap. I appreciate that, but don't. Because the boss back here is going to get me in trouble. And that happens frequently. But I will tell you, I appreciate you. My constituents appreciate you. And I want you to fight the good fight every day to protect those that are sending money to the state capitol, to the state treasurer, and fighting for the rights of the citizens so we don't have to suffer from inflation and more taxation and more money coming out of our pockets to someone else's pockets as we try to make a living. Thank you, Americans for Prosperity. I commend you. I salute you.
Thank you. Representative Herod.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, tomorrow is a really exciting day at the Capitol, and if my outfit is any indication, you might know what tomorrow is. Anybody want to guess? Zoo Day! Tomorrow we will be hosting the zoo right here in the Capitol. As you all know, the zoo is located in the heart of House District 8, and we have one of the best zoos in the entire nation. So be ready, because there will be live zoo animals right here in this building. I would think that our resident fashionista from El Paso County would encourage us to dress similar to our favorite animal in hopes that we might get to take a photo with a peacock, maybe even a zebra, a turtle, or anything else that might be your favorite. So be ready, be prepared, and please welcome our folks from the zoo tomorrow. Thanks.
Representative Soper.
Oh, thank you, Madam Speaker. I've talked to both the minority leader and the majority leader and been granted permission to be excused tomorrow at 1 o'clock onwards.
So approved. Representative McLaughlin.
Thank you. I'm back. Education Committee, we are hearing 3 bills today. House Bill 1109, Senate Bill 008, and Senate Bill 84. We can't wait to see you there. Thanks.
Thank you. Representative Valdez.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Those of you who like to eat lunch, there will be a lunch and learn today with the National Conference of Environmental Legislators. It is a bipartisan organization focused on common sense ideas, so if you like to eat and you like to live in an environment, this might be a good place to see you over across the street, SSB, at lunchtime, noon.
Thank you. Representative Snyder.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and members of the House Finance Committee. We will be meeting upon adjournment downstairs, and we'll be hearing 2 bills, 1162 and 1046. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, we have a tribute. Representative Martinez.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have a tribute and I request that it be read at length.
Mr. Schiebel, please read our tribute at length.
The House of Representatives convened in the 74th General Assembly hereby recognizes the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. This year, History Colorado will host a temporary display of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, marking the first time this historical document will be on display in Denver. On February 2nd, 1848, the United States and the Republic of Mexico signed the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, which signified an end to a war between the two nations and resulted in the formal relinquishment of over 525,000 square miles from Mexico to the United States. The land involved in this treaty now constitutes all or parts of 8 states in the American West, including Colorado. And it also moved the border between the United States and Mexico from the Arkansas River in our state to the Rio Grande River in Texas. This treaty also included commitments to respect the Indian tribes. However, this portion of the treaty was not upheld and required additional legislation. Meanwhile, the tribes were attacked and displaced by non-Indians. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo is a symbol of peace and conquest that for some led to great prosperity and others led to the eradication of their communities. The treaty also established the base of culture of the San Luis Valley and the start of what would be the state of Colorado. On the 175th anniversary of the signing of this treaty, the Colorado House of Representatives would like to congratulate History Colorado on sharing this important document with the citizens of Colorado and extend continued success in their mission to educate Coloradans on this important piece of our state's history. On request of Representative Matthew Martinez, given the 2nd day of March 2023, State Capitol, Denver.
Representative Martinez.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, you can be seated. So, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, it has a special place in my heart, being born and raised in the San Luis Valley. I'm sure you guys have heard about this phrase and this term for many years, is that we didn't cross the border crossed us. This is where this came from. So when you have a lot of those from the San Luis Valley that started originally as native indigenous, became Spanish citizens, became Mexican citizens, became American citizens, and then Coloradans. The town of San Luis, Colorado is the oldest town in Colorado. This is the first established town in Colorado. So when we say in here that this is where Colorado started, that is truth. That is in the valley. And it's all because of what happened in this treaty. And much like many in American history, there are good things and bad things that have happened. And I believe that this has established really the culture of not only the San Luis Valley, but really of Colorado, since this is where Colorado started. This is the first time that this is being displayed here in History Colorado, and this is something that I wanted to share and bring forth. And I want to thank the members of History Colorado that are here today for this and bringing this historical document, meaningful document to the state of Colorado.
Representative Garcia.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, it is an honor to serve with you.
It is an honor to serve with you.
I want to thank Representative Martinez for bringing this tribute forward, because it really was also a reckoning within the Latino caucus to have to fully understand even our own histories with this treaty. My family is from the San Luis Valley. My ancestors were displaced through this process, where we have lost so much of our history of who we are and where we come from. But what's important in this treaty and what is happening at the Colorado History Museum, what is it called? History Colorado, excuse me, is that we are addressing and learning what the true history of what's happened in this state is. So I do want to thank you for bringing this treaty forward.
Thank you. Thank you, members. One final announcement. Representative Doherty will replace Representative Morrow on the Business and Labor Committee for today only. Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move to proceed out of order for immediate consideration of Senate Joint Resolution 6.
Members, you've heard the motion. Seeing no objection, we will proceed out of order for immediate consideration of Senate Joint Resolution 6. Representative Froelich. Representative Froelich.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We move Senate Joint Resolution 6 and ask that it be read at length.
Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to Senate Joint Resolution 6.
Senate Joint Resolution 6 by Senators Cutter and Buckner, also Representatives Froelich and English, concerning the effort to acknowledge and enshrine in the Constitution the rights of women in the United States.
And Representative Froelich, will you repeat your motion for it to be read at length?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We move Senate Joint Resolution 6 and ask that it be read at length.
Mr. Schiebel, please read our resolution at length.
Whereas this year marks the 100th anniversary of when the Equal Rights Amendment, or ERA, was initially proposed in Congress. Many things about American life have changed since then. It took 100 years, but there is now widespread bipartisan support of the Equal Rights Amendment. And whereas the strides made over the past 100 years are not inconsequential, but are still piecemeal when compared to the straightforward declaration of the ERA, which simply states, equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on the account of sex. And whereas we know that women's rights on multiple levels are still being challenged. Bodily autonomy, equal pay, and protection from sexual harassment are still being denied. And whereas Jennifer Weiss-Wolf, the Brennan Center's Women and Democracy Fellow, noted that the ERA would empower Congress to enforce gender equity through legislation, and more generally, the creation of a social framework to formally acknowledge systemic biases that permeate and often limit women's daily experiences. Whereas among 193 United Nations member states, 85% have a provision in their constitution that specifically addresses gender equality, and 60% have a provision that prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex. And whereas the ERA would transform what is currently implicit into the unambiguous and strengthen the bedrock of our most dearly held American value, that all people are created equal. As one of the first states to allow women to vote, several years before the 19th Amendment gave all women in America this right, Colorado has proudly stood by and for women. The ERA has been duly ratified by the 38 required states. It is long past time to fill the full measure of this storied history. And with Virginia's vote last year, the last of the 38 required, it is time to enshrine the ERA into the U.S. Constitution. And whereas Coloradans and all American women deserve this basic protection of their inherent freedom, now therefore be it resolved by the Senate of the 74th General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the House of Representatives concurring herein, that women have fought long and hard to have their rights recognized, that women and those identifying as women are still subject to pay, pregnancy, and other forms of discrimination, and that having received the ratification of the 38 states required, it is time for the United States Congress to pass the Equal Rights Amendment.
Representative Froelich.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is an honor to serve with a female speaker, one of several that we have had in Colorado, because we are fantastic.
It is an honor to serve with you.
Thank you so much, folks, for allowing us to have this celebration today. I just wanted to highlight two things. One is the bipartisan nature of the Equal Rights Amendment from its inception in 1923, so that's why we're here today. It was 100 years ago. And while the text has varied over decades, In 1940, the Republican Party became the first major party to endorse the amendment in its platform, and it remained in the Republican Party platform until the 80s. And over the next couple decades, the bipartisan support ebbed and flowed. But as we are revisiting this issue, in Nevada, they had a bipartisan ratification in 2017, Illinois in 2018, where a majority of the Republican Party joined in the ratification vote, and in Virginia, a Republican-controlled legislature voted to ratify recently, making the 38th state. And then I just want to tell a little story, and the reason why we put roses on everyone's desk is related to an early senator who, Agnes Riddle, who in 1917, so almost all of our firsts for women in Colorado were Republican women. And she was the only woman in the Senate, in our brother-sister chamber. And they were going to do a vote on reinstating the red light district in Denver. And they assumed that she wouldn't show up for the debate because it was too delicate a topic for her ears. So she showed up, and there was some gasps, and she rose to speak to the proposition, and she said, "Why shut the gates of hell on these women unless you also shut the gates on the men who have been in the red light district?" And so the motion failed. Only the bill sponsor was the only pro vote. And then the next day, her desk was covered with roses. And her colleagues said, "Thank you for bringing that perspective." So that was one woman in a chamber full of folks that had a different point of view, and she made a difference, and she was important in Colorado. So thank you for letting us celebrate this today.
Representative English.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to just quote some comments from my sisters in Congress. And the first quote is, "As a Black woman who has experienced domestic violence, sexual harassment in the workplace, unequal pay, and blatant gender discrimination, I'm fighting for the Equal Rights Amendment because I know the impact constitutional equality will have on me and millions of women and queer people across the country," said Congresswoman Cori Bush. "To achieve gender justice in our country, we must enshrine gender equality into our legal bedrock, the United States Constitution. That is exactly what the Equal Rights Amendment will do. And this is why I am proud to co-lead this joint resolution alongside Congresswoman Presley and our colleagues in the Senate and the House, which reaffirms the validity of the Equal Rights Amendment's ratification while simultaneously calling for the removal of the arbitrary time limit once attached to it. Congress must make equality a priority and pass the resolution without delay. Women have done the work of preserving and defending our democracy for centuries. And it's high time our laws recognize our contributions and the historic role that we have played," said Representative Presley. "It also is not lost on me that the first time the ERA was put forward, women of color were not a part of the conversation. Today, we're leading and working in coalition to advance this priority. Our resolution will help address centuries of gender disparities in America by removing the unnecessary barriers that have prevented us from enshrining the dignity, humanity, and equality of all people into our Constitution. We, as women, have done our job. The states have done their job, and now it's time for Congress to do its job and pass this resolution." Those were words of Congresswoman Cori Bush and Representative Presley. In the words of State Representative Regina English, until there is an inclusive democracy, we can't say that it's fair. In order to have a fair democracy, it must be inclusive. So we need to be intentional on creating inclusive spaces for all people to belong. And I am proud to be in the number of the majority of women that is leading the state of Colorado. So we are doing the work, and the work is getting done. But we all know, colleagues, that we still have much work to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Representative Luck.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So the resolution title is concerning the effort to acknowledge and enshrine in the Constitution the rights of women in the U.S. And so I thought it fitting that we acknowledge the efforts of women even before Alice Paul in 1923. And so I move Amendment L001 to SJR 006 and ask that it be displayed.
That is a proper motion.
So the language of this amendment reads...
Representative Luck, let's make sure it's displayed. Thank you. Representative Luck, please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So it reads, whereas in the great history of our republic, as we have sought to march from subjugation to liberty and justice for all, acknowledging and enshrining women's rights into the laws of the United States began even before our founding, as captured well in the words of Abigail Adams, a leading woman of the American Revolution, when she wrote to her husband, quote, "I have sometimes been ready to think that the passion for liberty cannot be equally strong in the breasts of those who have been accustomed to deprive their fellow creatures of theirs. Of this I am certain, that it is not founded upon that generous and Christian principle of doing to others as we would that others should do unto us. I long to hear that you have declared an independency." As an aside, this is pre-July 1776. "And by the way, in the new code of laws, which I suppose it will be necessary for you to make, I desire you remember the ladies, and be more generous and favorable to them than your ancestors. Do not put such unlimited power into the hands of the husbands. Remember, all men would be tyrants if they could. If particular care and attention is not paid to the ladies, we are determined to foment a rebellion and will not hold ourselves bound by any laws in which we have no voice or representation. And whereas Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Sojourner Truth, and Colorado's own Elida Avery, along with many others, carried the women's rights and suffrage movement forward. And whereas in 1920, the efforts of multiple generations culminated in the passage of the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which enfranchised all American women. And whereas in furtherance of enshrining equality for women under the law, Alice Paul proposed the initial version of the Equal Rights Amendment, the ERA, in 1923, which stated, quote, at that time, this was the initial version, it stated, "Men and women shall have equal rights throughout the United States and every place subject to its jurisdiction." To honor those women who came before 1923, I think is only fitting. You will note, though, that this strikes some of the initial language so that it flowed and allowed for highlighting Alice Paul, so that some of those first part. But I do think it is important that we recognize all of those who fought well before the ERA was even considered, because they too had efforts that sought to acknowledge and enshrine in our Constitution the rights, the unalienable rights of women. Thank you.
Further conversation, Representative Bottoms.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to speak to this amendment and why I strongly agree with it, and to give some language with it also. I'm a pastor of a church. My wife is also a minister, is also ordained within my fellowship. It has been an uphill climb for her for many, many years, for decades, to be a woman in ministry. So I know how this actually works firsthand. I have fought alongside my wife. In fact, I'm a little more egalitarian than my wife is. So I have fought this even sometimes when she just wants it to just move on because she's fighting too big of a machine. I don't let that happen. I fight for her because I actually believe in rights of women. Not some rights of women, but all women. I believe in unborn women's rights. I believe in all women's rights on every single level. Let me read this letter to you. This is the response from his wife. This is John Adams's response to Abigail Adams, and much of this letter jumps out at me in so many ways as the husband of a very strong, very independent thinking, and a very courageous leader within a context which is called church and ministry that do not see women as equals in much of the church. My fellowship, the Assemblies of God, we are very egalitarian. We do see women as equals. They can pastor churches, they can do all that stuff, but that's rare. So John Adams responds to Abigail Adams, and he says, "As to your extraordinary code of laws, I cannot but laugh. We have been told that our struggle has loosened the bands of government everywhere. The children and apprentices were disobedient, that schools and colleges were grown turbulent, that Indians slighted their guardians, and Negroes grew insolent to their masters. But your letter was the first intimation that another tribe, more numerous and powerful than all the rest, were grown discontented. This is rather too coarse a compliment, but you are so saucy, I won't blot it out." That one really speaks to me. "Depend upon it, we know better than to repeal our masculine systems. Although they are in full force, you know they are little more than theory. We dare not exert our power in its full latitude. We are obliged to go fair and softly, and in practice, you know we are the subjects. We have only the name of masters, and rather than give up this, which would completely subject us to the deposition of the petticoat, I hope General Washington and all of our brave heroes would fight." And he's saying that our brave heroes would fight for women. We are pushing back in today's context. This started out, as was mentioned earlier, this started out as a Republican mentality. When the Democrats took it over, it stalled out completely until Ginsburg said, we should let it go and start over. This is where we are at with this. We believe in women, but we believe in the rights of all women under all circumstances with no deviation from that. I support this amendment.
Representative DeGraff.
Who keeps lowering this thing? Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is a privilege to serve with you.
And a privilege to serve with you.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The rights of women are and have been enshrined in our Constitution from the beginning. Perhaps not always recognized, but they have been enshrined. The pronoun he is a generic, that all men are created equal, is a generic. It means either men or women, unless specifically known to be male. Well, a female has an individual, a specific pronoun that would be considered special. Well, Abigail Adams was determined to foment a rebellion if the ladies were not more generously acknowledged in the Constitution, in the new Constitution. She didn't. There was no rebellion fomented, so it can only be naturally recognized that they were. So I also wanted to note that in the original, that I appreciate the recognition that along with the first representatives in our country that were of African descent, the first female representatives were Republicans, as were the first representatives who happened to be female. So I'd like to say to my Democrat colleagues, welcome. So I would like to recommend a yes vote on this amendment.
Representative Froelich.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you for this suggestion. I don't think it's necessary. The whole point is to celebrate the 100-year That's 1923 on. So we would just like folks to keep the resolution as it is. Thanks. That's
Representative Froelich, I'm sorry.
That's a no vote.
Unable to hear you. If you wouldn't mind
Oh, I'm
speaking
sorry.
louder.
We
into
just
the
heard a
mic.
no vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Members, the motion before us is the adoption of L001 to Senate Joint Resolution 6. Members, I will ask all of you to take your seats as this is a recorded vote. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Weinberg? Representative Dixon is excused. Please close the machine. With 21 aye, 42 no, and 2 excused, L001 is lost. Any further discussion? Representative DeGraff.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to move SJR 006 L003 and ask that it be displayed.
That is a proper motion. The amendment is properly displayed. Representative DeGraff, please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, in the name of historical accuracy, I would like to amend in gross joint resolution, page 2, and strike lines 18 through 21 and substitute for women the 1972 Equal Rights Amendment, however, died more than 4 decades ago without having acquired the requisite ratification by 38 states. It is no longer legally pending before the states for ratification, and it is no longer rightly pending before the Congress for amendment. In 2020, the late Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg commented on the status of the Equal Rights Amendment by saying, "I would like to start over. There is too much controversy about latecomers, like Virginia, after the deadline passed. Plus, a number of states have withdrawn their ratification. So if you count a latecomer on the plus side, how can you disregard states that said, we have changed our minds? And the insertion. Page 2, line 21, insert, whereas to become a proper amendment to the United States Constitution, adoption of the Equal Rights Amendment would now require a new 2/3 majority vote in both the United States House of Representatives and the United States Senate, and would require a new ratification subsequent thereto, and by 3/4 of the states. And page 22, lines 22, strike this. Page 2, line 28, after recognized, insert and. Page 2, line 30, strike discrimination and substitute discrimination. Page 2, strike lines 31 through 33. Again, in recognition of the work of the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I think we should pass this amendment. Wishful thinking is alive and well on the Capitol. Case in point, the Senate Judiciary Committee will hold a hearing on February 28th titled the Equal Rights Amendment. How Congress can recognize ratification and enshrine equality in our Constitution. This hearing is intended to push the fiction that Congress has the authority to resurrect the Equal Rights Amendment that it proposed in 1972 but expired more than 40 years ago. Article 5 of the United States Constitution gives Congress two powers in the constitutional amendment process. First, whenever 2/3 of both the houses shall deem it necessary, Congress may propose amendments. In Dillon v. Gloss, the Supreme Court expressed no doubt that this includes setting a ratification deadline. Second, Congress may dictate the mode of ratification, that is, whether states must ratify a proposed amendment in their legislatures or by conventions. That's it. Once it has proposed a constitutional amendment, including any ratification deadline, and designated the mode of ratification, Congress has no role or authority whatsoever. Congress exercised these powers in March of 1972 by proposing the Equal Rights Amendment, with a 7-year deadline for state legislatures to ratify it. A total of 35 states did so by January 1977, although 5 of them quickly rescinded their approval. This was fewer than the 38 required by the Constitution for ratification. Knowing that the March 1979 deadline was both looming and binding, Equal Rights Amendment supporters pushed Congress to pass a resolution extending that deadline to June 30, 1982. The only court to address the issue found the extension unconstitutional. Not only does Congress lack the authority to change a deadline after amendment has been proposed, but Congress passed this extension resolution with fewer than 2/3 of both houses required by the Constitution. In any event, no new states ratified the Equal Rights Amendment, as the Congress Research Service has stated many times that the Equal Rights Amendment formally died on June 30, 1982. Supporters, however, are still searching for vestigial signs. They actually claim the 1972 Equal Rights Amendment is now part of the Constitution after 3 states passed ratification resolutions in the last several years, long after the termination date. The late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, a booster of the Equal Rights Amendment, easily exposed the problem with this position. In a 2020 interview, she said that if you count a latecomer on the plus side, how can you disregard states that rescinded ratification? Applying Ginsburg math, only 33 states have ratified the 1972 ERA. No wonder then why Ginsburg concluded that Equal Right Amendment's proponents should start over. But they're not done, which brings us to the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing, which will focus on the resolution introduced by Senator Ben Cardin that purports to remove the 1972 Equal Right Amendment's ratification deadline and declare that it has been ratified by 38 states. A declaration that it has been ratified, not the actual ratification. Senators should reread Article 5. A proposed constitutional amendment becomes part of the Constitution upon ratification by 3/4 of the state. No congressional action can affect ratification in any way. On that point, Democrats should also check with their favorite liberal constitutional scholars. The late professor and former acting Solicitor General Walter Dillinger, for example, has written that Article 5 requires no additional action by Congress or by anyone else after ratification by the final state. The creation of a third step, promulgation by Congress, has no foundation in the text of the Constitution. Senate Democrats faced another awkward situation under federal law when notified that any amendment proposed to the Constitution has been adopted according to the provisions of the Constitution. The Archivist of the United States must cause the amendment to be published as part of the Constitution. The Archivist declined to publish the 1972 Equal Rights Amendment because, as advised by the Justice Department's Office of Legal Counsel, it is no longer pending before the states. Alabama and Illinois sued the Archivist in December 2019, seeking a final declaration on whether this 1972 Equal Rights Amendment had been fully ratified. The United States Judge, Rudolph Contreras, dismissed the lawsuit in March 2021, holding that Congress set deadlines for ratifying the Equal Right Amendment that expired long ago. The states appealed, and the case before the United States Court of Appeals is before the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia. Because the archivist is an executive branch official, the Biden Justice Department is defending him and filed its brief in March 2022. Here are some of the Biden administration's arguments that should be raised before the Senate Judiciary Committee. First, citing a law journal by then Professor Ginsburg, the department observed that even the 1972 ERA's congressional sponsor saw adding a ratification deadline as the customary statute of limitations. Second, Congress acted consistent with the establishment practice by fixing that ratification period through the proposed clause of the Equal Right Amendment resolution. Third, a proposed constitutional amendment is complete when 3/4 of the state properly ratify it. Fourth, those arguing that the Equal Rights Amendment has been validly adopted, notwithstanding the congressional deadline, have not identified any relevant legal authority establishing that this is so. Fifth, the question of the Equal Rights Amendment's validity is, at best, uncertain, and Congress has repeatedly acted on the assumption that the deadline is valid. It should take more than the imagination and a political agenda to properly interpret and apply the Constitution. Congress had the authority to set a ratification deadline for the ERA, and when it did so, at the suggestion of the Equal Rights Amendment supporters, everyone understood that the deadline was valid and binding. Because that deadline passed with
Representative
insufficient...
DeGraff, you have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Because that deadline passed with insufficient state support, the 1972 Equal Rights Amendment died more than 4 decades ago. It is no longer pending before the states for ratification and no longer pending before Congress for amendment. It is dead. Ladies and gentlemen, in recognition of the work of the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who has made these arguments before you and established these arguments and established I would urge a yes vote on this amendment, again, to recognize the work and intellect of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I urge a yes vote on this amendment.
Any further discussion? Representative English.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So the world has evolved, and here we are fighting for equal rights for women, and men still think they know best. However, we ask for a no vote. Thank you.
Representative DeGraff, you have
33.2 seconds.
6 seconds, and this is your second time to speak.
Let me compose myself. Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is not a matter of whether I know best. It is a matter of recognizing the work and intellect of Chief
Thank you,
Ruth
Representative
Bader Ginsburg.
DeGraff. Representative Luck.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So we're being asked to vote on a resolution that has factual inaccuracies in it. In essence, we are being asked to align ourselves, our character, our word with something that is not true. Whether a man or a woman presents that to us should not matter. Process matters. Nothing in the argument that was just spoken suggests that women should not have equal rights. What was shared is that the process needs to start again. That's what RBG mentioned, right? This very distinguished justice of the United States Supreme Court. She's saying it needs to start again. Let's avoid all of the legal confusions. It's not a bad thing. If you care about good governance, you should care about process. Due process. Yesterday, the DC Circuit unanimously affirmed a district court ruling declaring that the ERA is dead. The 3 judges were appointed, 1 by President Obama, 2 by President Trump, and 3 by President Biden. They all agree the ERA is dead. This should have bearing on this body. There is nothing to suggest that women's rights are not important in that. It simply says we need to make sure we do it right. If you're going to add an amendment to the Constitution, let's abide the Constitution and Article 5 provisions as to how it's changed. It should not be partisan. And it absolutely should not be an impugnment on the character of my colleague that by raising this valid issue, he should be dismissed simply because he is male. That does the exact opposite of what the ERA was initially intended to do, i.e., understand that men and women are equally valuable. Let us not create a society where women now have more value than men. We all have our own perspectives to share. We're all entitled to our own desk of white roses because we all have unique experiences that can contribute mightily to the deliberations of this body. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before us is the adoption of L003 to Senate Joint Resolution 6. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 21 aye, 43 no, and 1 excused, L003 is lost. Representative Bottoms.
I do believe, thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Speaker. I do believe that my responsibility is to speak for women's rights. These are getting impugned in a lot of different ways, including with this resolution. I would like to actually speak for the rights of women. The statement was made, if we're gonna have an inclusive democracy, then everybody needs to be included. Well, let me give you some groups that are not. Women in the womb, they're left out. They're specifically attacked, actually. Women that disagree with liberalism, they are attacked, they're left out. They're not allowed to have the same rights. Women that believe that they are the parents of their children and should have the rights over their children, they are left out. They're not included in this new ERA move across the nation. Women that believe they can change their minds after an abortion pill, specifically have been verbalized recently that they do not have rights and they cannot have choice to change their mind. They are left out of these kind of things. So let's pull back the cover and let's see what this is really about. If all the judges and all the highest leadership in our country, if all the Democrat leaders in our country, if everybody agree that the ERA is dead and it's over in its 1972 rendition, then why are we revisiting this at the federal level and why are we revisiting this at the state level? Here's the truth that everyone in this room knows. This is an end run around Dobbs. This is a way to try to get abortion back into some kind of constitutional argument. It's been defeated in every single way in the Supreme Court and every way. So we're going to do this again. This is not about women. If this was about women, then why aren't we letting women make choices? Why can't they change their mind after abortion pill? Why can't they actually be included in this inclusive democracy that we act like that this what this is about? I have fought for women's rights for my entire life. I'm actually known. Now, if you're not in ministry ranks, you don't understand this, but I have hired women to be pastors, equals with me in church. That's not okay in church thinking. Women are not allowed to be equal. I'm dealing with this at core levels that is astonishing to me. We act like we want women to have equal rights, but we don't. When the Republicans were pushing this years ago, we were moving it forward. When the Democrats, by the way, were fighting this. When the Democrats took it over, they stifled it. And now we want to revisit it? It's not coincidence. This is about Dobbs. So I would like to present, move Amendment 002 and have it displayed.
Amendment L002 is properly displayed. Please proceed.
I'm gonna jump down a little bit into this. Well, I'll start at the top. Amend a gross resolution, page 2, line 8, strike experiences and substitute experiences expressing openly how the original intent of the ERA has now been usurped and replaced, and whereas with the passage of Title IX, which was fought so hard for decades, and we're just throwing it to the wind, as part of the Education Amendments of 1972, and with the passage of other laws like it, equal rights for women in sports were duly recognized and rightly protected for some decades after. And page 2, lines 2 and 3, and substitute still being challenged. Bodily autonomy, including the right of women to be born. We want to be inclusive. We really want to be inclusive. Let's include them all. Let's include all women. The right of women to live according to her own set of moral beliefs and sexuality, which is not okay today. We can't even define what a woman is today. We call it pregnant persons and things like that. The right of a woman to refuse coerced medical options is still being infringed. Parental rights, including the right of a mother to teach her values to her daughter, the right of a mother to be apprised of any counseling, mental health, or abortion services being offered to her minor children. The right of a mother to refuse coerced medical treatment on her daughter, and the right of a mother to speak up at school boards without the fear of reprisal are still being infringed to this very moment. Protection from sexual harassment, including the right of a woman to compete in single-sex athletics. Are we being inclusive or are we not? This is very disingenuous, all the language that we say on one side, but we actually attack on the other side. Without being overshadowed, even physically injured by a biological male, the right of a woman to use a single-sex restroom and shower facilities without being intimidated or assaulted by a biological male. We don't let these women have a voice or rights. We kick them to the curb. And the right of a woman to protect herself from violence, including sexual assault with a firearm, is still being infringed. Those are constitutional issues that we say, sorry, women, you no longer have this ability. Strike lines 29 through 33 and substitute that women do not have to be men to be valuable, that they are valuable as they are, having been likewise endowed by their Creator with the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that too many of those rights are still being threatened or infringed, including rights to bodily autonomy, parenting, personal protection, and other forms of infringement, including those through legislation and overreach that has happened in this very chamber, this session, would obfuscate the very nature of what it means to be a woman. And number 3, that the ERA should be strictly interpreted to the original intent of the words as understood when first introduced, which was actually women's rights, and notwithstanding should not be interpreted to include a right to abortion, nor to expand the definition of sex to include anything other than the originally understood distinction between biological males and females. There is such a thing as XX and XY, and no matter how much you lie to yourself and change it and frame it in any way whatsoever, there is
Representative
XX
Bottoms,
and XY.
I'll ask you to be respectful.
There will always be XX and XY. So you are either XX or you are XY. We want to defend the ability for women to be women, regardless of how society plays the game. I
Representative,
support my amendment.
Representative DeGraff.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I also support this amendment, and I would like to give some more basis as to why. Well, recognizing that as a heterogametic human, that my colleagues don't necessarily recognize my equal rights before the law in this matter. The Equal Rights Amendment has absolutely nothing to do with abortion, insisted Representative Carolyn Maloney, Democrat, New York, on April 2019 Judiciary Committee hearing. Maloney has been the Equal Rights Amendment's primary House sponsor for the past 25 years. Methinks, however, that the representative doth protest way too much. The Equal Rights Amendment abortion connection has already been established for more than 40 years when Maloney tried to deny it. The 1972 ERA provided that equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state on an account of sex. Sex, of course, is recognized the difference between homogametic and heterogametic in an XY organism such as a human. This was the only resolution out of more than 1,000 introduced since 1923 to gain the two-thirds support that the Constitution requires to be sent to the states for ratification. By 1972, however, the ERA's costs far outweighed any potential benefit. Initially, backers said that without it, legislatures would never eliminate sexually discriminatory laws and that courts would never interpret the Constitution to prohibit such laws. But both of these objectives, however, have been achieved without the ERA. Legislatures began abandoning discriminatory laws in the 1920s. In ERA hearings during the 1930s and 1940s, even the National Women's Party, the ERA's strongest promoter, conceded that the legislative trend towards equality was unmistakable, and that while the 1972 ERA was pending before the states, the United States Commission on Civil Rights issued a report documenting legislative process for women in a dozen different areas, including domestic relations, education, equal pay for equal work, retirement, and criminal law, and has been noted many times, we are now at a majority of females in the House. The courts, too, began fulfilling the ERA's purpose without it. Lower courts began applying the 14th Amendment's equal protection principles to legislative classifications based on sex in the 1960s. The Supreme Court had moved its equal protection jurisprudence in the direction of sex equality even before Congress proposed the 1972 ERA. The late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg said in a 1997 interview that there was no practical difference between what had evolved and the ERA. So let me just say that again. There was no practical difference between what has evolved and the ERA. That was, the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. With the ERA's goals being achieved without it, ERA advocates had to find some other reason for it. This redirection occurred in 5 steps. The first step, in the 1940s, saw ERA advocates associating it with international human rights norms. Shortly after the United Nations approved the United Nations Charter, for example, witnesses in the congressional hearings began arguing that such agreements actually required ratifying the ERA. The next step was domestic. The 1979 National Women's Conference National Plan of Action explicitly connected the ERA to the Campaign for Reproductive Freedom, including eliminating limits on taxpayer funding of all forms of family planning. President Jimmy Carter's newly appointed National Advisory Committee for Women dispelled any remaining doubt. At their first meeting in January 1979, the committee's co-chairs asserted that the ERA was a foundation on which all our proposals must rest, including resisting the continued erosion of the constitutional right for reproductive freedom. course, that is not a right that is recognized. The third step, because rights come with responsibilities, the third step came after the 1972 era ratification deadline passed with fewer than the necessary 38 states approving it. A Senate Judiciary Subcommittee held nearly a dozen hearings on the ERA's possible impact, including one in January 1984 focused exclusively on feticide. Scholars on both sides of the feticide issue confirmed that the ERA could provide an alternative constitutional foundation for feticide rights. Later that year, in the Joyner Lecture on the Constitutional Law at the University of North Carolina School of Law, then Judge Ginsburg, argued that the Supreme Court decision in Roe v. Wade was weakened by its emphasis on autonomy rather than a constitutionally based sex equality perspective. The fourth step came when the state courts began using ERA provisions in their state constitutions to strike down limitation on taxpayer-funded funding of feticide. Witnesses in the 1984 Senate hearing had warned of this possibility for the federal ERA, and ERA advocates frequently said that the application of the state ERAs was the best indicator of how federal ERA would be applied if it was ever ratified. The final step is the increasing frequency of the public statements by feticide advocates confirming that the ERA would support their cause. In the 1993 Madison Lecture at Harvard, Justice Ginsburg repeated her argument from a decade earlier that Roe must have been less of a storm center if it might have been less of a storm center if it had focused on the women's equality dimension of the issue. Letters and statements by ERA supporters submitted that for the same hearing in which Maloney denied any link between the ERA and feticide directly contradicted her. The American Civil Liberties Union, for example, said in a letter asserting that the ERA could provide an additional layer of protection against restrictions on feticide, conception, and other forms of reproductive health care. At this hearing, Kelly Garcia, senior counsel for the National Women's Law Center, said the ERA would help create a basis to challenge abortion restrictions. In June 22 decision, Dobbs v. Jackson, the Supreme Court held that the Constitution does not confer a right to abortion, actually feticide. This will no doubt intensify the search by feticide advocates for a Constitution alternatives. Despite denials that no one believes, the groundwork has already been laid and all eyes are on the Equal Rights Amendment. So again, in recognition of the work and intellect of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I would request that you would recognize my equality before the law and speaking to this body as a heterogametic individual and vote yes on this amendment for the sake of historical accuracy. I ask that a yes vote be recorded.
Is there further discussion on Amendment L2? Representative English.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, we ask for no vote.
Seeing on this one, Representative Luck.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I rise in support of this amendment. I don't think it's shocking to anyone in this chamber my stance on the abortion issue, and so I rise in support, recognizing that femicide is a real thing and that the number of women who are killed via abortion are much greater than the number of men, simply because they are women. If you want women's rights, let's start with them at conception. Thank you.
Representative Holtorf.
Thank you, Speaker Pro Tem. I know that we have a lot of business to attend to today. There is some very strong sentiment about this particular resolution, which I think is surprising many of us. But the caucus members that have spoken, they have spoken about federal issues that are factual. Legal precedence has been set as we try to present and vote on this resolution across party lines at the federal level, as has been presented. Many of you know, and I've said this repeatedly, I'm the father of 5 young women. Between 30 and 21, I'm very proud of all of them. I'm very proud of their accomplishments, and I'm very proud of who they are. They are women. I've got 2 grandchildren that are born by women. That is one of the most sacred gifts that God gives a woman, is to bring children into this world so we can have families. And family is everything, as many of us say. I rise in support of this amendment. It talks about the rights of women in very clear terms. Because today, many of the women's rights are not being protected. And I'm talking biological women. Those rights of those women. The one that impacts me the most is the right of a woman to compete in a single-sex athletic event. My daughters all competed in athletics. Many of them played on state championship teams and won. They played against other biological females with the chromosomal makeup of women.
Representative Holtorf, please tread very lightly.
Thank you, Speaker Pro Tem, but I think it matters. We want to talk about Equal Rights Act for women. Then let's be very careful how we try to redefine what a woman is biologically, genetically, and chromosomally.
This is your second warning.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I'll try not to get a third because I know I'll be excused from this podium. I stand here in defense of my daughters and their future and my granddaughter's future. Because as I watched my daughters play in those games, playing against peer competitors, biological peer competitors, I know if someone wants to get into another category, but it's going to cause disparity, or it's going to unlevel the playing field, as they say, create an imbalance because of new societal norms that we want to create and make, then that is not fairness. That is not equity. And when that basketball team is playing on the field, and there are height, weight, and muscular advantages, that's not fair. It's flat not fair. And that's not okay. It's not okay for this father of 5 daughters. It's not okay when my granddaughter grows up in a world that we've created unfairness. For whatever reasons, yet we sit here talking about the Equal Rights Act for women, how they should be treated fairly. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the fairness factor is on the table. It's sitting right here. And I present it to all of you. That is why I'm in favor of this amendment. I'm in favor of this amendment. And that is why I will be voting against this resolution. Thank you, Speaker Pro Tem.
Is there further discussion on Amendment L2? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L2. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine, and members, please proceed to vote.
Please close the machine. With 18 aye, 46 no, and 1 excused, L002 is lost. Representative Bradley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move Amendment L004 to SJR 23-006 and ask that it be displayed.
The amendment is properly displayed. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I vote to amend in gross joint resolution page 1, strike lines 1 through 10, page 2, strike lines 1 through 23, and substitute, whereas every woman is inherently valuable and worthy of equal protection under our laws, and whereas women have fought long and hard to have their dignity and uniqueness honored in our culture and their unalienable rights recognized within our jurisprudence, and whereas it is important to strengthen the bedrock of our most dearly held American value that all people are created equal now, therefore, page 2, strike lines 27 through 33 and substitute, that we, the members of the Colorado General Assembly, hereby encourage appropriate observances, ceremonies, and activities to commemorate the generational efforts made to enshrine the rights of women into American law, and that we extend our gratitude to those women and men who have fought for the unalienable rights of women since before America's founding, and that there are important reasons to distinguish between the sexes with respect to athletics, prisons, domestic violence shelters, restrooms, and other areas, particularly where biology, safety, and privacy are implicated, and that women, including unborn women, have protectable interest in life, health, and well-being. The Equal Rights Amendment is a proposed amendment to the U.S. Constitution designed to guarantee legal rights for all American citizens regardless of sex. It seeks to end the legal distinctions between men and women in terms of divorce, property, employment, and other matters. Equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the U.S. or any state on account of sex. So I ask this assembly, and I want some attention, please. What is the umbrella of equal rights for women? Women in utero do not have rights. When are women allowed those rights, and who gets to decide? I've had to fight my life to get equal opportunities as a woman. I work in a male-dominated field where male counterparts make more than I do at the same job. I fought for equal pay for years. The women in my life fought for the right for us to vote and for Title IX to be equal under the eyes of the law. I fought hard to get pregnant, 4 years of test after test, shot after shot, lost pregnancy after lost pregnancy, all waiting to have a baby. My marriage suffered as I sank into a deep abyss of not being able to fulfill our future as a family with children. I felt like a failure as a woman. I spent 4 years trying to get pregnant, desperately trying. Finally, after 4 years of injections and drugs and trying, success with in vitro. And we were pregnant with boy-girl twins. I read every book, took every vitamin, went to every doctor's appointment. My pregnancy was beautiful, and I documented everything. Jay and I let our guard down after the first trimester and grew in excitement. We decorated the nursery, we bought clothes, we put car seats in our car. We were ready as we could be. And then on January 9th, 2007, when I was 8.5 months pregnant, an ultrasound revealed that our daughter had died. Do you know what that means? To tell me that she died, that means she was alive. She was alive. So we talk about equal rights for women. Where are hers? When do you decide, when those rights began, to tell me that my daughter has died, signify for 8.5 months that she was alive? My daughter, Emerson Riley, was alive. I felt her kick. I felt her move. She was living in my belly for 8.5 months. What would be the reason to have ultrasounds if we're not looking for life? What would be the point of looking for a heartbeat, for growth, or any abnormalities at every pregnancy appointment? What's the point of going to the doctor while you're pregnant? I'm going to listen to a bill, 1187, where you talk about pregnant women's rights in jail, and you don't give me those same rights.
Representative Bradley, I am deeply sorry for your loss. I ask that you remain focused on the amendment before us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What about my daughter's rights as a woman? How do we pick and choose which women get equal rights and which do not? It's supposed to be an equal rights amendment, but apparently not for my daughter, Emerson Riley. Is that what this assembly is saying? Are you saying that all women get rights except for the unborn? That is not fair or equitable in any sense of the word.
Representative Holtorf.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is very hard for my colleague to come up here and do what she does, and I appreciate the empathy displayed for her loss. She also talks about fairness to life. Now, many of you have heard that I have a lot of daughters, and one of my daughters is an ultrasound scan technician. She does what was described up here every day in the medical world. Pregnant women come to the hospital to get their checkups, OBGYN
Representative
pregnancy
Holtorf,
checkups.
I will ask you to speak specifically to the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Let me lean back over here so I can target exactly the area that I want to focus on here. I think lines 18 through 21. Important reasons for many, and it's listed there. I would add medical if I were to run an amendment to this amendment, but I'm not going to. And then lines 22 to 23, I speak directly to that women, including unborn women, have protectable interests in life, health, and well-being. Now I'm going to try to make my point as kindly and professionally as possible. But this point needs to be made in this chamber and in this state and in the nation and around the world. My daughter, with her complex scientific medical equipment, is able to do one thing every day for the families that come into the hospital that gives them joy and reassurance, and that is detect a beating heart. Because with a beating heart, we know that that is a sign of life. As God is my witness today, a beating heart is a sign of life. And if you don't believe me, why do we check people's pulses in medical procedures to see if there is life or death? Why do we have a machine that when it flatlines in a hospital and there is no pulse, is there a code red? I believe it's called in many hospitals, or a code, where everybody on the floor rushes to that patient to try to revive them and establish what? Hold on. Here it comes. A heartbeat. Now, I refuse to sit here today and listen to a resolution that wants to talk about women and not talk about what my colleague and her loss speaks to. Because every day that she went to the clinic for typically 8 months, and what all women look for, biological women who are pregnant, look for to get reassurance that everything is okay is that heartbeat. And my daughter, who's an ultrasound, yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I need to direct you back to the amendment and how the amendment applies to the resolution.
Thank you. Thank you for your leadership. I'm going to go about the unborn and the well-being and interests of life, health, and well-being of the women, including unborn women. Now, I'm going to wrap this up, Madam Speaker, because I know we have a lot of business today, but this point needs to be made, and I hope Colorado is watching. I hope the media desk is listening, because you need to hear this. Life. My daughter detects life every day with the ultrasound when she finds a beating heart, and the women, like my colleague, when they go there and know about that beating heart, they smile and are happy. When my daughter does not detect a beating heart, she emotionally is crushed because she knows what that means. And it's not, let me read line 22 again, that women, including unborn women, have predictable interests in life, health, and well-being. In this case, they don't have life, for the record, because there's no heartbeat. They don't have health because they are dead. And if you're dead, you don't have health because you don't have life. And there is no well-being after death. It's just like that. It's a cold, hard fact and truth that people don't like to talk about, cold, hard facts and truths, but I am here to have the conversation in so many areas. This amendment speaks to that. Because life is precious. And life begins with a beating heart. Even, ladies and gentlemen in this chamber, my esteemed colleagues, over 60% of Coloradoans
Representative
agree
Holtorf.
that life is a beating heart. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Winter.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for bringing forth this amendment on behalf of my two daughters. If anything, I ask you all this. It takes bravery and moxie for her to come up here and tell her story. You can see she gets emotional and she's passionate about this. And I commend her for that. And everybody in this chamber, whether you agree or not, should commend her for coming up here and telling that story. When you stand up here in front of this group of people and in front of the world and you're willing to lay your soul out like that, whether you agree or you disagree, I ask you to give her the respect she deserves for telling you all her story. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before us is the adoption of L004 to Senate Joint Resolution 6. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 19 aye, 45 no, and 1 excused, L004 is lost. Seeing no further discussion, Representative Bottoms.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is to the actual resolution.
Yes, Senate Joint Resolution 6.
I was really hoping to be able to get behind this from some of these amendments that would have actually made it about women's rights. And since it's no longer really about women's rights, it's more about other issues, I cannot support this resolution at all.
Representative DeGraff.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And again, I appreciate, to my colleagues, I appreciate your tolerance of my inferiority before the law on this issue as a heterogametic mammal. We have presented historic, constitutional, and factual issues with this ideological screed. But I recognize that as my good friend and colleague reminds me, in the Church of Woke, facts don't matter. The esteemed Ruth Bader Ginsburg signaled the end of the ERA's journal as it concurrently stands when she told The Atlantic, if you count a latecomer on the plus side, how can you disregard the states that rescinded ratification? Applying Ruth Bader Ginsburg math, only 33 states have ratified the 1972 ERA, Equal Rights Amendment. No wonder then why Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Justice of the United States, concluded that Equal Rights Amendment's proponents should start over. Another issue with this, the Senate resolutions mentions those who identify as women, and there is nothing like that in the Equal Rights Amendment. So if you want to be inclusive, if you want to do equity, then you should follow Ruth Bader Ginsburg's advice and start over. What this resolution, besides being constitutionally, factually, and historically incorrect, amounts to is a bait and switch. Now, we know this resolution will pass because, again, in the Church of Woke, facts don't matter. But
Representative DeGraff, please.
thank you, Madam Chair. I recommend a no vote on this resolution, so perhaps future resolutions, we can have resolutions that are not ideological screeds and are both are constitutionally, factually, and historically accurate. I request a no vote on this resolution.
The motion before us is the adoption of Senate Joint Resolution 6. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 52 aye, 12 no, and 1 excused, Senate Joint Resolution 6 is adopted. Co-sponsors. Thank you, Mr. Schiebel. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the following bills be made special orders at 10:50 a.m. House Bill 1195, 1167, and 1187.
Seeing no objection, the bills listed by the Majority Leader will be made special orders calendar at 10:55. Representative Tatone. Members, you have heard the motion. Seeing no objection, the House will resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for consideration of special orders. Representative Tatone will take the chair.
All right, the committee will come to order. With your unanimous consent, the bills will be read by title unless there is a request for a bill to be read at length. Committee reports are printed in your bill folders. Floor amendments will be shown on the screen and in your iPads. Bills will be laid over upon motion of the majority leader. And unfortunately today, the court rule is not relaxed. So, sorry about that, but I don't feel like doing that. Who wants to go first? Mr. Shebel, please read the title of House Bill 1195.
House Bill 1195 by Representatives Michelson, Janae, and Soper concerning the operation of automated pharmacy dispensing systems.
Representative Michelson, Janae.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's an honor to serve with you.
It's an honor to serve with you as well.
I move House Bill 1195 and the committee report.
All right, to the committee report.
In the committee, we made some amendments, and then those amendments are going to be amended. So I'd like to move a series of amendments that help make the committee report better. I move Amendment L004 and ask that it be displayed.
Okay. Just make sure that
All right, the amendment has been moved and displayed. Please proceed, Representative Soper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This amendment is one that came up in committee because I was asking the questions, what happens if, for example, I go to City Market, it's a grocery store on the western slope, but the pharmacy is closed, but yet I still wanted to be able to pick up my prescription. This amendment would allow for that. So even though the pharmacy within the grocery store might be closed, you could still have the automated dispensing machine outside that would then be able to dispense.
And we ask for an aye vote.
Yes.
All right, the question. Any further discussion on Amendment L004? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L004. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody?
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, no. All right, the amendment is passed. Representative Soper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Amendment L010 to the committee report and ask that it be displayed.
All right, the amendment's moved and displayed. Please proceed, Representative Soper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this was a practical question that also came up in committee. The question was, what happens if the machine were to break? We need to guarantee that there's clear contact information on who to contact immediately if there is some sort of a malfunction, and that information be displayed on the machine.
Representative Michelson Janae.
And we ask for an aye vote.
All right, is there any further discussion on Amendment L010? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L010. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. All right, the ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Representative Michelson-Jeannet.
And that is all for the committee report.
All right, any further discussion on the committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the committee report as amended. Please, all those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? No. All right, the ayes have it. The committee report is adopted. To the bill, Representative Soper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Amendment L005 and ask that it be displayed.
All right, the amendment is moved and displayed. Representative Soper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This amendment came to us from one of our colleagues here in the chamber who's really passionate about making sure that everything is accessible for those who have a disability. And so this ensures that the machines are designed in such a way that someone who's disabled can still access them, and would ask for a yes vote, an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L005? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L005. All those in favor say aye. Perfect.
Aye.
All right, there's a few. Anyone opposed? No. All right, the amendment is adopted. Representative Soper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Amendment L006 and ask that it be displayed.
All right, Amendment L006 is moved and displayed. Representative Soper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So one thing we were concerned about in committee was certainly about the narcotics that might be dispensed and where they would be. So this adds some refinement to that so that it's not just anywhere. We did have an amendment in committee so that you could have the
Substitute amendment? Substitute amendment. That was in instead of at.
Oh, okay.
Representative Soper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Amendment L009 as a substitute amendment to Amendment L010.
Well, last amendment we had, Representative Soper, was L006. So Representative Soper, we did Amendment L010 before. We adopted that. This one is L006. So you want to amend okay, so you're substituting 9 for 6. Because I just want to make sure, because you didn't say that. Let's take a brief recess here just to make sure we got this all sorted out.
Thank you.
All right, the committee will come back to order. Representative Soper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And for everyone listening in the chamber at home, I just want to correct on the record that we are moving Amendment 9 as a substitute amendment to Amendment 6. And I ask that Amendment 9 be displayed.
Okay, all right. Amendment 9 is displayed, and it's moved. Representative Soper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Amendment 9, we want to make sure that words have the best meaning possible, so we want to make sure instead of at the location, that it's in the location, because those could have two different meanings. So that's why this amendment is important. We ask for a yes vote.
All right, is there any further discussion on Amendment L009? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L009. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. All right, Amendment L009 is adopted.
We've already, yeah, we've done 10, right?
Representative Soper.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members. I appreciate everyone being here and listening. This is one of those major bills. I was excited to be able to join this bill because back in November, I had the opportunity to tour two different nations' healthcare systems, one in Scotland and one in Taiwan. And one thing that I saw right away in Taiwan was they had these automated pharmacy dispensing machines. And they were just fascinating to see because it produced a more accurate result. They were secure. They allowed for better access, whether in a healthcare facility or in a rural setting as well. So there is kind of that future point in time when you don't have to rush from, say, the farm back to City Market or wherever the pharmacy is located. You can actually just get there as long as the overall a retail establishment remains open that has the pharmacy. I mean, that's just one example. There's numerous examples, but these can be in multiple locations in a hospital setting as well, so that you don't have to send an oncology patient clear across the hospital grounds to wherever the pharmacy is within the medical facility. So the possibilities are certainly almost endless here. It incorporates technology. I'm super excited to be able to allow this to come to Colorado, and appreciate Representative Janae taking the lead and pushing this through. I'm excited about this.
Representative Michelson-Janae.
I'm also excited about this, and I'm really excited that you had the opportunity to visit Taiwan and see these in action. They are in action in the United States as well. One thing that I want to make sure that you know is that you are always interacting with a pharmacist. So there is a pharmacist that is working with you through this machine. So I ask for an aye vote.
All right, is there any further discussion on House Bill 1195? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of 1195 as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. All right, the ayes have it. 1195 is amended, passes. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of House Bill 1167.
House Bill 1167 by Representative Degree Kennedy concerning persons who report emergency overdose events in good faith.
Representative Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's an honor to serve with you.
It's an honor to serve with you too, sir.
Thank you. I move House Bill 1167 and the Judiciary Committee report.
All right, to the committee report.
Madam Chair, with your permission, I'd like to speak broadly to the bill at the start, because later I'm actually going to ask people to vote no on the Judiciary Committee report, and I will explain why.
All right, you have leeway to do that. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, House Bill 1167 is about saving lives. When Colorado's Good Samaritan Law was first put in place in 2012, it was done with bipartisan prime sponsorship, because the idea was you want to make sure that I thought I was shouting. Am I not shouting? All right. Is this a little bit better? No one has ever told me I'm not loud enough before. Members, I'm pleased to bring House Bill 1167 today. This is a bill designed to save the lives of people who may be facing a drug overdose that could be fatal. This is based around the Colorado Good Samaritan Law, first established in 2012 by bipartisan group of legislators, with the idea that if you are near a person who is overdosing, the one and only thing you should be thinking about at that moment is how to save that person's life. As many of you are aware, especially if you were here last year, the overdose crisis in Colorado has been getting worse and worse, and this is true across the nation. This has been especially true with the introduction of new black market substances like fentanyl, carfentanil, and other fentanyl analogs into the marketplace that are incredibly deadly and can harm people who may not even know that what they're consuming contains fentanyl because it is so often cut into other substances. I'm very proud of our Attorney General and other law enforcement leaders for the work they have been doing to crack down on cartel distribution, taking thousands and thousands of pills off the street, reducing the risk that people find themselves with these substances in their possession. And as we continue those kinds of efforts, there is more we can and must do. House Bill 1167 builds on the previous Good Samaritan law by making sure that we have protections in place so that if a person is facing the question of whether to call 911, stay on scene, cooperate with law enforcement, and try to save a life, as opposed to running to avoid arrest or prosecution for themselves, that it is crystal clear that the only choice they need to worry about is how to save that person's life. This bill has been through an extensive stakeholding process. I'm proud to say that with the amendments we plan to offer today, we have brought yet another district attorney, or we have moved another district attorney off of an opposed position into a neutral position on the bill, a Republican district attorney, I might add. We are also bringing the Colorado Association of Chiefs of Police into a neutral position on the bill with the amendments we're running today. I want to repeat that. With the amendments we're offering today, the Colorado Association of Chiefs of Police has lifted their opposition to this bill. I believe this is based on a broad understanding and a shared belief that we must save as many lives as possible. And what we are doing in this bill is we are establishing a line between people who are using or sharing small levels of substances and the more significant dealers who are really putting these drugs out into our communities that are causing significant harm. I believe that this bill is going to make sure that law enforcement still has the tools they need to crack down on the dealers that are causing that harm, while also making sure that the low-level people that are using drugs or sharing them among friends are not going to face law enforcement consequences if they do the right thing and stay on scene to save a life, fully cooperating with law enforcement along the way. I will pause before I get to my amendments and let my soon-to-be co-prime sponsor say a few words.
Representative Sarbini.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to echo the sentiments that you just heard from my esteemed colleague, because he is really speaking some truth here and done a lot of work and stakeholding to get to this point. I'm like right up in it.
Speak into that microphone.
All right. But I want to thank him for everything, and I want to thank him for giving me the opportunity to co-prime this with him, because it really is about saving lives. There was a bill that went through committee yesterday that would hopefully do the same, but for now, this is going to be one of the best options we have to make sure that we save lives and get people the help they need immediately. We don't want people to die. We don't want people to suffer, and this will help to make sure that they get the help so that they don't overdose. I've done a lot of work in this realm in criminal defense, and honestly, it's a struggle sometimes, and people are scared, and this will give them the opportunity to not be scared and help their friends and keep people alive. So thank you, and I please ask you to vote for this bill and the amendments that are forthcoming.
Representative Kennedy, Degree Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This will be the last thing I say before we take the vote on the committee report. We made some good amendments in the committee, and as we continued stakeholding and developing the additional amendments we plan to bring to the bill, it became clear that it would be more simple if we were to reject the committee report and then rebuild those amendments. So at this time, I ask for a no on the Judiciary Committee report.
All right. Any more discussion on the Judiciary Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Judiciary Committee report. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no.
No.
All right, the noes have it. The committee report fails. Representative Degree Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Amendment L8 and ask that it be displayed.
All right, the amendment has been moved and is displayed. Go ahead and tell us about the amendment. Representative Degree Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Amendment L8 does a few things. First of all, this amendment contains the biggest compromise that we made on the bill. The bill, as introduced, established an affirmative defense for those that are charged with distribution of less than 4 grams. What this does is it removes the affirmative defense and instead puts in place a sentence mitigator so that you are still charged with a crime. It'll just be a drug misdemeanor class 1 as opposed to a drug felony if you fully comply with the Good Samaritan law and cooperate with law enforcement. This amendment also addresses two more issues, one of which is clarifying third parties that may be involved in the scene. So the current Good Samaritan law would apply to the person who called 911 and the person overdosing. But what if there's a third person on the scene who's administering CPR or went out on the street to hail an ambulance and try to get someone to come respond to the scene? That person is currently not included in the Good Samaritan law, and this amendment would bring those additional parties in, provided that they're doing something to help save the life of the person in that situation. Last but not least, this amendment also clarifies an amendment we made in the Judiciary Committee, clarifying that no immunity or affirmative defense is offered if the crime being charged is of manufacturing of these substances. I ask for your support.
All right, is there any further, Representative Soper?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also rise in support of the amendment, and I just want to say to Representative Kennedy, I greatly appreciate you working with us and with the law enforcement community to be able to have this amendment that we have before us. So I'm in support of the amendment. Thank you.
All right, is there any further discussion on Amendment L008? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L008. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, no. All right, the ayes have it. Amendment L008 is adopted. Representative Degree Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Amendment L5 and ask that it be displayed.
All right, Amendment L005 is moved and displayed. Please proceed, Representative Degree Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Amendment L5, I'll explain the technical first and then the substance of it later. It removes the felony under subsection 2.7 from the immunity provision. So the fentanyl bill last year established new drug possession felonies in two sections, one of which was the most frequently talked about, which had to do with the possession of between 1 and 4 grams if you knew that it contained fentanyl. The second was based on a purity standard. If the drugs you contained had more than a 60% concentration of fentanyl, it has become clear through the stakeholding that a person that is in possession of a pure powder form of fentanyl that contains that level of concentration is very much more likely to be intending to distribute than to use it for personal use. So the police chiefs asked me to remove subsection 2.7 from the immunity to clarify that these people are the ones we're not trying to necessarily capture with the Good Samaritan provision. So I ask for your support.
Any further discussion on Amendment L005? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L005. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? No. All right, the ayes have it. Amendment L005 is adopted. Representative Degree Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I appreciate your attention. That is the last of the amendments I'm bringing. With these amendments added to the bill, I want to reiterate that we have brought into a neutral position the last of the stakeholders who had registered an oppose or amend position on the bill. Thank you.
All right, any further discussion on House Bill 1167? Representative Armacost.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, or Chair. I just wanted to speak on the bill as far as it is very appreciative to see that there's willingness to work on amendments and so forth. But at the same time, we're still dealing with a situation where there's a poison that we have on the street that people are distributing, whether they're dealing it or handing it out at parties, and it's poisoning and killing people. And to be able to give somebody a pat on the back, essentially for reporting it after they killed somebody with this poison is, to me, unconscionable, and I am not in support of this bill on that aspect. But from a law enforcement perspective, we are, again, with this bill, smearing the line of accountability for people that are distributing this poison on the streets, causing death. And we're giving them an open door to not being held accountable based on the fact that they reported a death that they caused. So I want everyone to consider that deeply when you are voting in favor or opposition of this bill, hopefully in opposition, which is what I encourage. I'm definitely a no vote today. Thank you.
Representative Winter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to bring this from a different perspective. So for those of you that don't know, on one side of my family, we're farmers and ranchers, but on the other side of my family, we're funeral directors. There's a lot of times when we're meeting with families, we minister to these families. And we sit down and we talk to these people and we look across at them that have lost a mother, father, daughter, son to drug use. And I will say, never once in these conversations has any of those family members ever not wanted justice for the loss of their loved one. I've never one had say, oh, I wonder how the person that gave my mother, father, son, daughter the drug, I wonder how they're doing. I wonder how they're going to come out of this. Those people are sitting there, they're devastated, they're heartbroken, and they want justice for their loved one. As we continue to watch this poison be pushed to the residents of Colorado, I ask you, think about that. I'm telling you from firsthand experience. They hurt, and they want justice, and they want it now. And at the end of the day, this is real life. I don't see how we could give a get-out-of-jail-free card to somebody when somebody else is putting their family member in a 6-foot hole. So once again, I ask you to vote no on this bill.
Representative Soper and then Representative or you okay with, you just go. Representative Soper.
Sorry, thank you, Madam Chair. I was slightly confused there. I actually rise in support of this. I have a slightly different analysis based on the amendments. I was a no in committee, but with the amendments that were worked out between myself and the bill sponsors and our law enforcement community, it's important to understand how the bill has changed. So it's only applies to when you have a recreational setting, so it's not a transaction. It reduces the sentence for unlawful possession charges. So it's not a get-out-of-jail-free card. It's reducing the sentence. And then it's tied to you actually had to do something in the rescue. So there has to be at least a modicum of doing something to save a life. And I do believe that on our humanitarian side, we also have to promote that if your friend is ODing, that's not the time to flee. We should have something in law that says we're encouraging people to do the right things, even though collectively they were doing the wrong things. They were doing drugs recreationally. If someone were to actually die from this overdose event, there's still plenty of other charges a DA has in his discretion to be able to charge, everything from manslaughter on down. So this is definitely not going to take away from that. And in most of those cases, when it comes to the plea deal that's likely to be offered, the unlawful possession charge, 9 times out of 10, will be thrown out because there's a lot more serious offenses that are going to be charged and are going to be the ones that that individual is going to be in prison for. So I believe that this bill really is more of a good, encouraging bill for people to stay around, call 911, flag down the ambulance, engage in CPR, do the things that we would want people to do to preserve life. But certainly if there is a major event that does happen and death does occur from that, I mean, a DA is likely to have a number of other charges in play, not just the unlawful possession charge. So I believe this is a good compromise approach. I believe it's a good message to Coloradans that we want you to call 911 if someone needs help, needs medical attention. So thank you.
Representative Mobley.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So I just want to encourage everyone to vote yes on this bill. And I know most of you can't imagine that you would be in any of these situations where someone you love is overdosing or someone you love is in the room and wondering whether they should call 911 or not, or someone you love is getting arrested for using fentanyl. And I am so happy for all of you who can't imagine that in your life. And I wish that I couldn't imagine that in mine, but I can and I do. And this bill is meaningful in helping to save lives, and that is always a good thing. So I really want to thank the sponsors and this for bringing it and being so thoughtful about it. Vote yes.
All right. Is there any further discussion? Minority Leader Lynch.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
This is an issue that's near and dear to me because this impacts a bill that I was largely involved in last year. And I really appreciate the work of the sponsor to actually fix things before we came to the floor and make things better in this. That being said, I'll be a no on this, but mainly because we haven't really seen the play out of these sort of statutes in an affirmative way. And so until we have more proof on how this Good Samaritan effort works, I can't be in support of this today. But if it saves one life, I will be proven wrong. And so I appreciate the efforts. I appreciate the work. I appreciate the sentiment that goes into us dealing with an issue that really, it's a problem that we need to worry about fixing the problem. But if we have the responsibility in this chamber to save some lives and the opportunity to do that, and this does that, I'll be proven wrong on it. But for today, I will be a no. Thank you.
All right. Any further discussion on House Bill 1167? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1167 as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, no. All right, the ayes have it. House Bill 1167, as amended, passes. Mr. Sheeb will please read the title of House Bill 1187.
House Bill 1187 by Representatives Bacon and Amabile, also Senators Gonzalez and Fields, concerning alternatives in the criminal justice system for pregnant persons.
Representative Bacon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is an honor and a privilege to serve with you.
It's an honor to serve with you, too. Thank
Okay,
you.
I move House Bill 1187 and the Judiciary Committee report.
All right, let's go to the committee report.
Okay, in the committee report, we did adjust the bill to add some amendments to have mostly conforming language for juveniles, and then I think that's actually what we did. However, I will note that in committee, we also mentioned to those who were there that we were going to continue working with district attorneys to figure out how to get the bill in a better spot, in a more agreeable spot. And so with that, I'm actually going to move a few amendments. So I'd like to first move L5 and ask that it be displayed. Oh, you need the packet.
All right. Amendment L005 is moved and displayed. Assistant Majority Leader Bacon.
Thank you. So, members, L5 is a redraft in how we now reference the postpartum defendant's condition. And we ask for an aye vote.
All right. Any further discussion on Amendment L005? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L005. All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed, no. All right, Amendment L005 is adopted. Representative Amabile.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So now we'd like to move.
Gotta wait. Sorry.
Representative Bacon.
Bill.
Okay.
Representative Bacon.
So we're still on the committee report, and we ask for an aye vote on the committee report.
Okay. Any further discussion on the committee report? Question before us is the adoption of the committee report as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. All right, the ayes have it. The committee report as amended is adopted. All right, Representative Amabile.
Thank you. And now we're to the bill, and we would like to offer Amendment L006.
Can you move the amendment?
Yes, I'd like to move Amendment L006 to House Bill 1187 and ask that it be displayed.
All right, thank you. All right, the amendment is moved, and I can't see the number on that amendment. Can you shift that?
It's L006.
Right, I just want to make sure we have the right one up. It's properly displayed. Go ahead and speak about the amendment, Representative Amabile.
This is making sure that we're conforming our bill with the Victims' Rights Act. And this was part of what we were working on between the committee and now.
All right.
And I ask for a yes vote on this amendment.
All right, any further discussion on Amendment L006? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L006. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. All right, the ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Representative Amabile.
Yes, next I would like to move L008 and ask that it be displayed.
All right, can you, there we go. All right, the amendment is moved and displayed. Representative Amabile.
Thank you. This amendment strikes a section of the bill that was controversial for the district attorneys, and we had created a path for somebody to get parole, and this takes that part out and talks about pretrial instead. I ask for a yes vote.
All right, any further discussion on Amendment L008? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L008. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. All right, the ayes have it. Amendment L008 is adopted. Representative Amabile.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm just going to talk to the purpose of this bill. I think a lot of work is being done this year in this chamber about keeping families together. And why do we care about keeping families together? Why do we care about making sure that we don't cause generational trauma by separating babies from their moms or children from their parents? And I think we do that because we have a big problem right now with what we're doing with regard to our whole criminal justice system. And we are creating generational harm. And this bill is seeking to make a very small change in saying that if you are pregnant or postpartum and you are in the criminal justice system, that the criminal justice system will recognize that and will use that information as part of how you are adjudicated. It doesn't say they have to. It doesn't say if you've committed a violent crime that you're not going to pay a penalty for that. It just says if it's possible for you to be in an alternative sentence and you meet all the criteria, that they will consider that and that they will have a presumption that that would be better. It shifts a little bit the balancing test between the punishment part and the part where we say this is beneficial to the mother, to the baby, and to our society. And that's really the reason for the bill. And I ask for a yes vote.
Any further discussion on House Bill 1187? Representative Armagost.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So again, I want to bring this into a law enforcement perspective or an enforceable perspective as far as this bill is concerned. On the cover, it looks great. The idea of it looks great, to be able to offer something to pregnant women that are going to have to be separated from their child after birth. The fact of the matter is, if you look at the criminal aspect of this, in any gang or any drug ring, drug distribution ring, women are exploited in these groups. Females are exploited at very young ages, unfortunately. And with that, they are typically impregnated. If youth are not used in this, pregnant women will be used in this. Youth are typically used in crimes, teenagers selling guns and selling drugs, because the punishments for them are going to be less. And drug dealers and gangbangers know that they can use them as basically a patsy, if you will, of somebody that will go down for their crime. Using that with pregnant females, I think, is equally disturbing. To get them involved, paying them with drugs, paying them with whatever, but using pregnant women to distribute drugs, guns, whatever, this is a gangbanger's best option at potentially getting away with almost literally murder.
Representative Armagost, where are you going with this?
I'm going with the fact that this bill is going to be dangerous for law enforcement and for our communities. From a public safety aspect, we are endangering pregnant women by putting them in positions where they're going to be exploited to commit these crimes for the actual wrongdoers in our society. So I'm a no vote on this bill. This is something that is going to exacerbate the criminal society that we are enabling by further doing this and smearing the line of accountability even more so. So I encourage a no vote on this bill. Thank you.
Assistant Majority Leader Bacon.
Thank you, members. And for those who've been following this bill, apologies for not actually earlier coming up to share what the bill does. We have been having conversations with our colleagues from across the aisle as well about this topic. And I want to be very clear because it's important to me as we pass bills and laws that we understand the scope of what we're saying. There's nothing in this bill that actually lessens your culpability or crime. What this bill talks about is if you are charged with a crime, whether it is a petty offense, and actually it prohibits, if you're charged with capital offenses, that your condition of being pregnant can be considered if it does not outweigh public safety for purposes of the different phases of the criminal justice system. What it does not do is say you will serve less time. Charges and how much time people want to affix your crime are up to district attorneys who have the consistent authority to do so. But what this bill does say is if you are pregnant, you have the opportunity to raise that and ask for the least restrictive means of serving your time, not that you get out of your time. So you will not find in the bill a place where it says that someone is automatically given the right to serve less time. In fact, we just brought an amendment to be sure that is clearer. What the bill did say was, if you raise this, you might be eligible for parole. And we actually just removed that from the bill for some of those concerns, and that was the last of any hints to that. So members, the purpose of the bill is to name that pregnancy and postpartum are actual medical conditions, and that treating it as such with least restrictive means that do not go above the risks of safety is something that we are encouraging to do. It's not a guarantee. You still got to go through hearings. You still got to talk to district attorneys. There's still a parole board. There's still a judge. And so the last thing I would just say is, as we've been, the real important part of this bill is to note again that being pregnant or losing a pregnancy or experiencing postpartum are conditions that deserve medical care, and that there might be places in which someone could find that care better. We talk about the importance of newborns connecting to mothers and families. We talk about the importance of what the imbalances are that comes from those types of separations, and also the chemical conditions that are postpartum. So we'd like to be able to have continued conversations. I do want to share some of the things that we are considering to help for the concern that this might entice more people to abuse women, is that we are entirely willing to say that that practice is discourageable as well as abhorrent in the legislative deck to discourage that. We're not sure if we want to create a new crime around it yet, but even if we did, that is not the purpose of this bill. The purpose of this bill is for someone to be able to raise the condition of pregnancy where there's still authority from all of those involved, again, DAs, judges, probation, parole, to say it is least restrictive means that this person, particularly women, who the majority of whom are convicted for misdemeanors, have a way to be safer around carrying their child. So again, members, that is what this bill does.
Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'd like to move Amendment L010 and have it displayed appropriately.
All right, the amendment has been moved and is displayed. Representative Wilson.
Thank you. When we are talking about keeping the child and mother together and making sure that they are protected, I think it's important that that starts from the beginning. In the bill, a court shall not admit in a criminal proceeding information relating to substance abuse. If this is found out in the course of the pregnancy test, which is offered by this bill, it would be important for the court to understand that there is a problem here that does affect the well-being of the child. Moving forward, this could be either during the pregnancy or after the pregnancy that the substance abuse would be harmful to the child. So we are asking that required reporters still report if there is a substance abuse problem that may be affecting the baby or child.
Representative Mabele.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We do not want to discourage women from getting pregnancy tests, and we ask you for a no vote on this amendment.
All right, is there any further discussion on Amendment L10? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L010. All those in favor say aye. Anyone opposed? No. No. All right, the noes have it. The amendment fails. Is there any further discussion? Representative DeGraff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the recognition, albeit ironic, of the importance of pregnancy and mother-child relationship. If anything approaches a superpower, I'd have to say it's growing a human. But to create an exploitable class...
Hey, Representative DeGraff, can you speak to the bill?
I am speaking to the bill. Thank you for your leadership. Creating an exploitable professional pregnant criminal is not a way to protect the rights of women. I appreciate that it changed this bill has been modified by amendments and condition of being pregnant, giving increased latitude to go towards the least restrictive means. But that's not. This creates a disparate. Well-intended, it creates a disparate and inequitable treatment under the law. We're also in a realm where we're told that we need to recognize, acknowledge, and affirm that somebody is what they say they are. If somebody says they're a pregnant person, do we just take their word for it? There is no pregnancy test required, at least not that I can tell. There's been a lot of amendments today. And if this was a deliberative body and not one intent on ramming through legislation, then I'd say there's a version of this bill that I could get behind. But this isn't it. Thank you. I urge a no vote.
Any further discussion? All right, well, hold on one second. We'll be at a brief recess. All right, the committee will come back to order. Representative Evans.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Some good negotiations. So in the interest of time here, I would like to move Amendment L013 and ask that it be displayed.
All right, Amendment L013 is displayed. Go ahead, Representative Evans.
Thank you. So what this amendment does is recognizes that, unfortunately, oftentimes criminal elements, gangs, people who don't respect women can use them to commit crimes, especially given the considerations that this bill gives to pregnant or postpartum women. And so my concern is that we don't want to create a perverse incentive for people who are already committing criminal acts and who don't respect women to try to monopolize and capitalize upon the considerations of this bill to further victimize women. You get my 2-minute cop story. When there was once upon a time, we were following a really bad criminal. We were able to track him to his place of residence, and we did what was called a surround and call out. It basically means we surround the residence, we turn on all the lights, we shine some spotlights in the windows, and we say, hey man, the gig's up, we've been following you, we know that you've been doing bad things, you gotta come out. Negotiations went on for about 30 or 45 minutes, and eventually the door opens, but instead of the criminal man coming out, his girlfriend came out, and his girlfriend comes up to us and says, hey, I did all of the things, the reckless driving, the drug dealing, all of those things, that was actually me. And we said, no, that's not actually you. We've been following this guy for several hours. We positively identified him. That wasn't you that did it. And she said, no, it's me. Arrest me. I'm here to take responsibility for all of those crimes. And I looked at her and I said, so tell me about that brand new shiny black eye that you got. And that was when she broke down and started crying, and she said, oh no. My boyfriend, unfortunately, has been making a lot of bad criminal actions his whole life. He's been in and out of prison. He's been in and out of jail. He's currently on probation right now. He was the one that was doing all of these bad things, but he knows that his probation will be revoked if he gets arrested and charged for these crimes. So he told me, oh, if you love me, you'll go out and you'll take the responsibilities for these crimes, because the girlfriend had a clean criminal record, and he told her the judge will go easier on you because you have a clean criminal history and I don't. And she said, that's not fair. You committed the crimes. You ought to take the fall for this. And that was when he punched her in the eye and said, no, you will go outside. You will take the charge for these crimes, and you'll tell him that you did it. And so that's what I want to make sure that we are considering with this bill. This is why I have brought Amendment L013 to address the fact that there are folks, such as the one I've just described to you, that will completely take advantage of women and any considerations that they get as a result of being pregnant or postpartum to try to make that woman either commit or take the fall for a crime that they did not commit. So with that, I ask for an aye vote on Amendment L013.
Representative Armagost.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm in favor and support my colleague's amendment to this bill. And on those stories, there's a lot of them, but if anyone is curious on the reality behind the exploitation of pregnant women, especially pregnant youth, please feel free to hit me up. I've got a great article that you can read that will give you the reality behind all of this. I'm in support of this and ask for an aye vote as well on this amendment. Thank you.
Representative Amabile.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This amendment creates a new crime, and we're not prepared to, on the fly, create a new crime without talking to law enforcement and the district attorneys and doing a rigorous stakeholding process. So we ask you for a no vote on this amendment.
All right, any further discussion on Amendment L013? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L013. All those in favor say aye. Anyone opposed? No.
No!
All right, the noes have it. The amendment fails. Representative Evans.
Thank you. So, given the failure of my previous amendment, I would like to move Amendment L017 and ask that it be displayed.
All right, Amendment L017 is moved and displayed. Go ahead, Representative Evans.
Thank you. So given the concerns about creating a new crime on the floor, this amendment addresses the legislative declaration in the bill and states that it's the intent of the General Assembly that a person who coerces or extorts a pregnant or postpartum woman in the commission of crimes should be subject to being investigated and, as appropriate, prosecuted for a criminal act pursuant to this Title 18 being the criminal code. So this legislative declaration addresses my concern by making sure that guidance is given that pregnant women ought to be protected and postpartum women ought to be protected, and that the coercion or manipulation of them to commit a crime is not the intent of this bill, and anyone who does that coercion or manipulation should be investigated and held accountable for doing such things to a pregnant or postpartum woman. I ask for a yes vote on L017.
Assistant Majority Leader Bacon.
Thank you, members. We did spend time working with our colleagues to figure out this language, and it doesn't deviate from the purpose of the bill. Again, the bill is to say that if you are pregnant and postpartum, that should be considered for least restrictive means, but it is by no means the intention of the sponsors that pregnant persons or postpartum persons be abused or used for their condition in pursuit of crime. And so with that, we urge an aye vote.
All right, any further discussion? Representative DeGraff.
Keep messing it up. I blame you. As written, at this point, based on what is specifically excluded, I can only assume that the intent is to create a professionally pregnant person, which also supports the fetal harvesting industry, and you're going to create a whole new class of exploitation. The logical issue would be to lay this bill over so we can get the language right and not move this towards being in law, where we do create that perpetually exploited female on a day that we ironically gave tribute to the Equal Rights Amendment. I ask for a no vote.
Any further discussion on Amendment L017? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L017. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? No. All right, the amendment is adopted. Representative Bacon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will move L19 and ask that it be displayed.
All right, L019 is moved and displayed. Assistant Majority Leader Bacon. Assistant Majority Leader Bacon.
I didn't hear, I'm sorry. Members, this is clarification to the bill that if someone is convicted of what we call some of the major crimes pursuant to the Section 18, 1.3406, that section is the mandatory sentencing section for particular crimes. If you are convicted of one of those crimes, this bill says that the eligibility in alignment with the theme of our bill, you do not have that eligibility of presumption. So this aligns to the other sections where we say, for example, if you're ineligible for bail or bond because of a particular crime, you would not be eligible for this presumption. The same with capital crimes. And so what this amendment does is add particularly for sentencing, for the mandatory sentencing type of guidelines for the crimes labeled in Section 2, you would be ineligible for the presumption. We ask for an aye vote.
Representative Evans.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the interest of time, good amendment. Vote yes.
All right, any further discussion on Amendment L019? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L019. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? No. All right, the ayes have it. Amendment L019 is adopted. Representative Assistant Majority Leader Bacon.
Yes, members, thank you. We are back to the bill. We urge an aye vote on the bill. We do also hope that, the work that we did with our colleagues across the aisle is recognized in the vote. So thank you all so much.
Representative Amabile.
Good bill, vote yes.
All right. Any further discussion on House Bill 1187? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1187 as amended. All those in favor say aye. Anyone opposed, no. All right, the ayes have it. House Bill 1187 as adopted is passed. Where is... Assistant Majority Leader Bacon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that the committee rise and report.
All right, hearing the motion and no objection, the committee will rise and report.
The House will come back to order. Mr. Schiebel, please read the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Madam Speaker, Committee of the Whole begs leave to report it has under consideration the following attached bills, being the second reading thereof and making the following recommendations thereon. House Bill 1167 as amended, 1187 as amended, 1195 as amended, passed on second reading and ordered engrossed and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage.
Representative Tatone. The motion before us is that the House adopt the report of the Committee of the Whole. There are no amendments at the desk. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Herod is excused. Please close the machine. With 43 aye, 20 no, and 2 excused, the report of the Committee of the Whole is adopted. Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move to proceed out of order for consideration of Senate amendments to House bills.
Seeing no objection, we will proceed out of order for consideration of Senate amendments to House bills. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title of House Bill 1043.
House Bill 1043 by Representatives Lindsay and Puglisi, also Senators Janal and Rich, concerning the safety of children and youth through required background checks on adults when a child or youth is placed out of home with kin, including relatives.
Representative Lindsay.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is an honor to serve with you.
And an honor to serve with you.
I'm like the biggest gobbler of them all in here. I love to gobble at people when they have to come down here and do this. So this is kind of painful, but I will take it and enjoy it.
You realize, Representative Lindsay, that everybody is going to try and gobble louder now.
Madam Speaker, I move that the House concur in Senate amendments to House Bill 1043.
That is a proper motion. Assistant Minority Leader Puglisi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This amendment, law enforcement came back and said that they had some issues with the way we had the language around fingerprints. They just needed it to conform. Very simple amendment, and we urge an aye vote. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before us is to concur with the Senate amendments on House Bill 1043. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 63 aye, 0 no, and 2 excused, the motion to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 1043 is adopted. Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move for the passage of House Bill 1043 as amended.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before us is the repassage of House Bill 1043 as amended. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 59 aye, 4 no, and 2 excused, House Bill 1043 as amended is repassed. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Schiebel, please read the title to House Bill 1072.
House Bill 1072 by Representative Velasco, also Senators Roberts and Will, concerning the compensation of civil defense workers.
Representative Velasco.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the House concur in Senate amendments to HB 1072. And the amendment simply expanded the definition of a civil defense worker to include a physician, healthcare provider, public health worker, or emergency medical service provider. So I urge and I vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before us is to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 1072. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 63 ayes, 0 no, and 2 excused, the motion to concur with Senate amendments to House Bill 1072 is adopted. Madam Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move for the repassage of House Bill 1072 as amended.
Seeing no further discussion, the question before the House is the repassage of House Bill 1072 as amended. Mr. Schiebel, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Please close the machine. With 61 aye, 2 no, and 2 excused, House Bill 1072 as amended is repassed. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Further announcements or introductions? Representative Taggart.
Madam Speaker, it's an honor to serve with you.
And an honor to serve with you.
This is a very difficult thing for me to do, and you guys are all anxious to get out of here. I made a mistake in the resolution this morning, and I voted no when I firmly believe yes. I honor my colleagues that brought very significant amendments, and I wish some of that language would have, please be seated, would have improved the resolution. But anybody that knows me or has ever worked with me knows how firmly I believe in equal rights. As a corporate executive, every woman on my staff was paid at least the same level as a man, if not higher, because in many cases they were more talented and performed at a much higher level. I apologize this morning. I got lost in all of the amendments back and forth. I wanted to listen very carefully to what my colleagues wanted to add, and I wish some of those could have been added, but at the same time, I apologize for making a mistake because overall, I very much support equal rights, and thank you. I'm sorry.
Thank you for your words, Representative Taggart. That was a moment of personal privilege that absolutely would have been granted. Representative Doherty.
Thank you. I've been approved to be excused tomorrow after 12 p.m. Thanks.
So approved. Representative Weinberg.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's an honor to serve with you.
And an honor to serve with you.
What a crappy morning. I'll put some humor to it. I found a can of corn on my bloody desk. I have no idea who put this corn on my desk, and I don't know why it's there. Please, point of clarity would be great. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Representative Weinberg. Representative Sirota.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, House Appropriations will meet tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. in the Old State Library to hear 7 bills listed in your calendar.
Thank you, Representative Sirota. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to lay over the balance of the calendar until tomorrow.
Seeing no objection, the balance of the calendar will be laid over until tomorrow. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the House stand in recess until later today.
The House will stand in recess until later today.